Greetings and welcome to another River Radio Sports Central podcast powered by our friends at NovaCare Rehabilitation. Alongside Matt Varney from 103.5 ESPN, I am Darren Kinnard, and we are in the midst of the postseason run here as all of the sports and activities are there, with the exception of boys basketball, which starts on Monday.
That's right.
The pairings came out last week, and do we have plenty to talk about there. But again, this is, this weekend is boys state wrestling individual state in Champaign. The girls' state bowling is this weekend. I believe that's in Rockford. Girls' state wrestling is next weekend. Girls' regional finals. We had some last night as we were recording here on Friday morning. Just a tremendous time here as we come to the end of the winter season.
Well, and as you mentioned, some girls' regionals happened last night, some happening tonight, and some happening tomorrow night as well. I mean, it's just it's a buffet right now, especially if you're a girls' basketball fan, but basketball fans in general, you have a lot of good games on both sides. Tonight, of course, regional championships, and then you've got some conference-deciding games tonight as well. A lot on the Route 13 corridor, which we try not to just give love there, but, man, there's some really good games on Route 13 tonight.
Yeah, no question about that. And when you look at the bowling, not like the boys necessarily. The boys, we had a ton of Southern representation. We have the Salem Lady Wildcats as a team, and then Sydney Nelson from Heron. Those are the only teams or the only participants from the South to make state. Again, they have just started the opening round at state for them. Wrestling started yesterday with the individuals, and wrestling's a little different because the day one, everybody has their first round preliminaries, and if you win, you come back that night and you have the quarterfinals. And then if you were to win that one, the semifinals are tonight, finals are Saturday night. Now, here's the thing. You think, well, if you reach the semis, I should get a Final Four, top four finish. That's not the case.
No.
If you lose in the semis, you go back, and then you are in the semis of the consolation or the wrestlebacks. So you're guaranteed a medal if you reach the semifinals, but you still could finish as low as sixth or as high as third if you lose in those semifinals. And so we had two wrestlers from our immediate area, Dylan White from Mount Vernon, and that was in the 2A 144, and then Cohen Sweely in the 113 from Benton. Both of those guys won their quarterfinals, and they will wrestle in the semis tonight. And Dylan is unbeaten.
Yeah.
And
he's had a crazy career.
Unbelievable career, unbelievable senior season. He lost in the finals last year at 138. He's up a weight class. And yesterday he was just dominant, Matt. He had two tech falls, and basically that's when you win by 15 or more points.
Yeah.
And he won a combined 31-0. And
that's
so
unreal.
Just super impressive. And again, now you get into the semifinals. He's got a freshman, but he's from IC Catholic, which is a traditional power.
Yeah.
And he's likely looking at a guy, if he makes it past that, a guy that was a finalist from Washington in the finals. But again, just it's potentially there for him to have an unbeaten state championship senior season.
Yeah, well, and I mean, you just laid it out right there. I mean, that is stuff of movies right there. You're going up against basically a prodigy right there and a freshman. I mean, you usually don't see freshmen at this level to begin with in a state tournament. To be going on to the semifinals is pretty amazing for a freshman, so congratulations to that kid first and foremost. But so you're up against the prodigy, and then if you get past that, I know it's 144, but Washington is in that area of the state where they are corn-fed and they are just a different breed. I would know because I'm from that area.
Right.
And, those kids are scary to look at sometimes. You're sure you're in this weight class? Right. But, yeah, so that is something that best of luck to Dylan, but he's got a tough road ahead of him, but we'll be rooting for him, obviously.
And Washington's one of those programs, just tradition, tradition rich. In fact, the young man that beat him last year in 138 was from Washington. He is familiar to that extent. Cohen Sweely last year as a freshman, and again at the lower weights you see younger kids sometimes, but he made this point last year and ended up sixth. He lost in the he lost his last three, so he lost in the semis, and then he lost twice on Saturday. But still, as a medalist as a freshman, so he's got that experience, and so it'll be interesting to see how that carries over. So, it won't be something where he's going to be big, bright-eyed necessarily by, the stage is not going to be too big for him, I don't think.
Right, exactly. And like I said, with the kid from IC Catholic, you don't see a lot of freshmen at this stage usually in the state tournament. It's great when you see it, but, obviously, the experience is going to be a big deal. He's found his way back to this point. Now it's about getting over that hump if he can do that. And if he doesn't, that's okay because he's just a sophomore, so he's still got plenty of time to try to get to that top of the mountain. But it'll be interesting to see how he uses last year's experience and puts it into the next couple of matches.
We had 3 area wrestlers that won their preliminaries but then lost in the quarterfinals, so they're in the wrestlebacks. And then everybody else, the other 8 from our area had tough days in the prelims, and so they are in the wrestlebacks now, and so they basically, for those looking at from a bracket, they're on the left side of the bracket, the losers bracket, and they've got to work all the way back. If it was basketball, where they'd be playing for the consolation title, this is to get back to play for third. And there's a lot of work to be done there.
Well, and a lot of work is right because they have to work just as hard or double as hard, really, because they get kind of double the matches sometimes. You hear about, oh, my gosh, they had this many in this day and everything, and then you're sitting there talking about the people that are in the winner's bracket, and it's like, one this day, one that day, and most of them are doing 2, maybe even 3 in a day.
The wrestlebacks, if you lost your opener, if you win your first wrestleback, you've got a second against those that lost in the quarterfinals, and then you're done for the day. But then tomorrow you come back, you've got the semifinals of the, if you get through that, and so you'd have 2 more tomorrow to potentially get to the point where you'd have to medal. So, it definitely is a long road to hoe for sure. Talking girls basketball, the regional finals last night, we had several in the area, and as you mentioned, there's even more. There's more tonight, and even one Saturday because of the week of, I won't necessarily call it Snowmageddon as much as it was Ice-mageddon a few weeks ago, but we had a pretty significant amount of snow. And, in 1A, Edwards County beat Woodlawn 53-32 to win their own regional title. Grace Bishop becomes the school's all-time leading scorer. Again, a lot like Mr. Marlowe from Weber, she's just a junior. So, I mean, to be able to set that, and that's not just girls. That's the entire school scoring record for her.
It's really cool.
At Pope County, they were delayed because of the weather. Semis last night, Shawnee over Hardin County, 49-27. Cairo beat Pope County 69-62. Shanti Taylor from Cairo scored 42 in that one. So that sets up tonight's final of Shawnee and Cairo down in Golconda.
And that was a bit of an upset for Cairo, especially by the seeding. But
by seed and at Pope County as well.
And I mean, so you didn't expect to really see the co-pilots in this moment, but great for them, and let's see what more they can do.
Also last night at Dupo, Oakville took care of Sandoval Odin Patoka 42-27, and we have the full list of scores from teams in our expanded region on our riverradiosportscentral.com website. And when we go to 2A at Hamilton County, Mount Carmel beat Carmi-White County 43-21. The top-seeded Lady Aces move on. And then we've got the 4 games that feed into the Westland sectional, and this is we've called it the subsectional of death, and and it all went 1 and 2. The top seeds prevailed, and so Bree Central just whacked Mater Dei 57-26 at Columbia. And at DuQuoin, it was Harrisburg over West Frankfort, 55-44. So it's going to be Bree Central and Harrisburg in one sectional semifinal, and then in the other, Vienna, the top seed, survived at home against Johnson City 48-40, and then Greenville, Nashville beat Carlisle 58-28 was the final there. So it's Vienna and Nashville in that second semifinal. And look, Nashville and Central have been top teams in the state all season long. But we've seen Vienna and we've seen Harrisburg, that they took care of their business the way they had to. but now they have a major, major task in front of them.
They do. Although Vienna-Nashville really is one of those kind of licking your chops around the area for teams, saying, man, that looks like it's going to be a really good game. Vienna did struggle a little bit with Johnson City last night, and Johnson City clearly that's their third time seeing them, probably sat there and said, okay, we got a couple things figured out, and then Vienna struggling a little bit, banged up a little bit from what I've heard. So, it kind of was the perfect storm, but Vienna prevails there, got a little bit of time to get right, but Nashville is a big hill to climb, but it still is one of those games that's like, that should be a really good game. But yeah, as you're saying, Nashville, Bree Central, they're the Giants in the area, and so they're going to be the favorites to meet in the sectional finals next week. But you know what? That's why you play the games.
Absolutely, and a tip of the cap to the Lady Indians. I mean, this is a squad that had lost to Vienna by 36 each of the previous two meetings, including one 10 days ago. So at Vienna, I mean, everything was going against them, and no reason to think that this would be necessarily a tight game down the stretch. But they did make it a tight game, and certainly the Lady Eagles had to sweat to get out, and so again, tip of the cap to the Lady Indians for that one. In 3A, our local teams are yet to play. We have the Marion Lady Wildcats playing tonight for the Heron Championship. Yep. They're playing Freeburg, and then Mount Vernon will take on Carbondale tomorrow night at 6. That is for the Mount Vernon 3A regional title. And, again, you've got the 3 South 7 teams there. There's going to be no secrets between Mount Vernon and Carbondale when they go at it. And then Marion with Freeburg. Freeburg's maybe a little hard to get a grasp on. But, again, you've got the travel factor. And, Marion is the top seed. And so you'd like to think that they'd have a pretty good shot to move on.
Yeah, likely. And Eric Griffin, a great job he has done in year one as the Wildcats head coach on the girls' side. Mount Vernon last night, I know we're talking about girls' basketball and not boys' basketball, but still whacking East St. Louis the way that they did was really impressive to me. But yeah, Carbondale, Mount Vernon, I can't off the top of my head remember how those games went. Obviously, Mount Vernon won the title once again, but I can't remember exactly how close those games were. But you know what? The Terriers are going to be coming in saying, why not us? Why not finally pick up that win? And as we allude to several times here at this point in the season, and coaches will allude to, you hate to see a team a third time in a season, especially when it's a conference opponent. So, yeah, this will be a really interesting game on Saturday night.
Very, very similar to what we were just talking about with Johnson City and Vienna. I don't think they were lopsided to the degree of that. But, again, I think they were, situations where Mount Vernon, clearly won both. They're at home, and so, again, they have all the reason to be the favorites. But sometimes, Mo is a funny thing. And, if things don't go right early – or things go great for Carbondale, that type of thing. So that, again, what's that saying? That's why they play the games?
That's why they play the games. And, I look at that, and it's like truly that third time, it's scary for those teams that were on the winning end if they swept them in the regular season. And I've been saying that to people. I will get to the boys in a little bit, I know, but I've been saying that for Murfreesboro because you look at their potential path to a regional title, they very well may have to go through Massac County and Harrisburg, who they've swept both times this season, but it's the fact that you're playing them a third time. That's so tough.
Right, and again, it comes down to execution in that, but and also again we talk about these are high school kids.
Exactly.
We see this in college. We see this in pros, and it's human nature when you've beaten somebody, and if you've beaten them soundly twice, to think, we're just better than them, and again, that's why it's critical in those situations that the dominant team, so to speak, or the one that's won twice, has to come out like a house of fire.
Exactly.
And take away any doubt or take away any thought that this is going to be competitive, or you've got a chance at an upset. Otherwise, the longer that team's in there, the more it builds, and then the more pressure, especially on the top seeded team.
Yeah, we're getting into coaching cliches at this point, but it's true. You and I have seen so many games. Those cliches have a reason for being cliches because they're so true.
Right.
There's been so many times that we've seen a below 500 team in football just stick around for a half, and then the team that's undefeated looking to go 9-0, and it's the 9th week of the season, and that let's say 3-4 team or 3-5 team is sitting there and saying, hey, why not play spoiler here against this team that we're not supposed to beat? And then they go on and do it. It happens all the time, and so just don't be surprised if you see an upset like that.
No doubt, no doubt. All right, let's talk to the boys. And we've talked about it. If you tuned in to Friday Night Live last week, you heard my rant. Again, I'm a bracket guy. I felt like when the girls' pairings came out, with just a few exceptions, I thought they were done pretty soundly.
I thought so,
as far as who was everybody was supposed to be. Everybody was at where they were supposed to be according to seed. And so we sat here last Friday talking about the subsectional of death and going, hey, there's not much travel considering it's Chester and Chester and Carlisle as the host. So this should go by seeding, and you 1 and 8 and 4 and 5 and. No, they said, Darren and Matt. That is not what we're going to do. And they went out, and quite honestly, it is one of the worst things that I think I have seen in this whole seeding situation and pairings and all this and that. In the Carlisle Regional, they sent the 5, 6, 7, and 8 teams, and they're all going to be matched up in the quarterfinals. And they sent 9, 10, and 11, and 12 to Chester, and those are going to be matched up in that one. And so basically, and again, when I say this, it's not a disrespectful term to those seeded 9 through 12, but they were seeded 9 through 12 for a reason.
Yeah.
Althoff and Pinckneyville got an extremely big gift last Friday when those pairings came out. And they're going to face the winner of 9 and 12 and 10 and 11 versus facing the winner of 5, 12, and 8, 9.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And they were dealt an amazing hand in front of them. But still, we'll keep saying it. You got to play the games. Obviously, they're going to be going in as the favorites. People are expecting to see them in the regional finals at Chester. But you walk in thinking that, it's a foregone conclusion that we're going to do that. And one of those teams could potentially pop you. Now, obviously, those two teams have probably the better athletes in potentially that entire subsectional. When you look at those two teams, obviously 2 and 3 are pretty darn good too. But Pinckneyville and Althoff are fantastic teams that they could go in on an off night and probably win against a lot of teams, not just the 9, 10, 11, 12. Right. But, again, if they sit there and say, you know what, we can take an off night and put in our backups or whatever, it's not going to go well for them. But that's also what coaches of Althoff and Pinckneyville know. We got to go out there and give it our all. And you know what? If we blow them out by 50, we blow them out by 50. Fantastic hand to be dealt if you're Pinckneyville or Althoff. Would have expected a little bit more competition, especially as we've been saying all season long, that just that subsectional is just insane. And then to just kind of give them a gift, that's, and it's no offense to 9, 10, 11, 12. It's just the fact that I think they can all look at that and say, man, you really gave us a tight needle to thread there, didn't you?
Well, and when you look at it, the 9 seed in this scenario is Sparta, who has had a pretty good season, and it would not be a stretch to say that 9 could have beaten 8, which the 8 is Westland, and in fact I believe they just beat Westland, in a regular season.
I think they did last night,
in a game last night. So that's obviously not out of the realm of possibility. So them playing Althoff, it would not have been a stunner, but the difference is if this would have been seeded and done appropriately by seeding, if the pairings would have been done by seeding, that regional would have been at Carlisle.
Yeah.
And so Carlisle, as the 5 seed, would have gotten the 12 seed Redbud, and then it would have been Carlisle and Pinckneyville in the semifinals at Carlisle. And so that's the big difference. And now instead, if you go by seeds, it should have been Carlisle versus Redbud in the 5-12. You've got Nashville the 6 against DuQuoin the 11. And then you've got Breeze Mater Dei and Chester in the 7-10 game. And then, as we said, Sparta and Westland in the 8-9 game. But instead, At Carlisle, you've got 7 Breeze Mater Dei at 6 Nashville and 8 Westland at 5 Carlisle. This is unfair to both teams.
Yes.
If you're 7 or 8, you should not be on the road.
I agree.
And if you're 5 or 6, you should not be having to play 7 or 8.
I agree.
Especially not in the first round. That can't happen.
No, absolutely. And you mentioned the fact that, well, if it had gone the way that we presumed it would, Pinckneyville would likely, potentially match up with Carlisle at Carlisle. And that got me thinking, did someone sit here and say, well, that already happened, we can't have that happen? I don't know. Thrown out there, we're obviously going to have a conspiracy theory out there, thanks to me now. But, you look at things and you're just like, how did this happen? And that's where your mind starts to race.
Right. And here's the thing is that one of our regulars on the Friday Night Live said, well, they wanted to see Mater Dei and Central, but here's the thing. It would have been Mater Dei Central in the semifinals. Yes. Now Mater Dei has to beat the 5 seed just to get there.
Yeah.
And that's not right.
No.
And talking to an area coach, and he put it as succinctly as I was like, wow, that's great, and I'm going to steal that. But you had a situation where we used to have just the regionals, and there was complaints because there were regionals that were too loaded. But yet then we go and do this at Carlisle. But anyway, I digress. Well, then they for a brief time they went with, especially in the bigger classes, they went with the seed in the whole sectional.
Yeah,
and then people got upset because it was too much travel. So then they broke it up into the subsectionals where there's 2 subsectionals feeding into a sectional. And this coach put it, if you're going to keep the subsectionals, we're going this route for travel.
Yeah.
You don't need to adjust the seeds within the subsectional for travel.
Right.
There's just no, and that was just, it's very simple. Otherwise seed the whole thing, or go back to the regionals, and again, I've said all along, the bare minimum, protect 1 through 8. Right now, 1 and 4 go together, and 2 and 3, and then they can put 5 through, 15, 16, wherever they want.
Yep.
As they've proven. So again, protect 1 through 8, and then, otherwise, why are you seeding it?
Right, exactly.
Why are you seeding it outside of the top 4? Because it clearly doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and talking about, doing it for travel, I mean, that was one of my things that I had said past couple of weeks, being like, everyone was saying, Harrisburg's going to be the 3 in the other subsectional there of the SIU sectional. And I was saying, I don't know, because they're always thinking about travel. It's going to be either Murphy or Harrisburg that's going to be really unhappy with where they end up assigned. And sure enough, Harrisburg gets the 3. But again, we're talking about 1 through 4. That's sometimes just the burden that you bear as a top 4 seed. But again, I go back to
there's no regard for travel. Right. When it comes to the top 4.
Exactly, because you're supposed to be that good.
And, well, no, it is where it is because of who are the ones that are hosting and where that fits. And then what happens is if you have a matchup, like last year they sent Lawrenceville to Vandalia, which is an atrocious trip.
Yeah.
And then, to make the rest of the regional add up mileage-wise to the least amount. Well, now they have to shuffle other teams around, and and then in 1A, there's some things, and there's nothing that says that as the top seed you should be protected or as far as location. But what they did, with Waltonville and Oakville is common sense would think that Waltonville was going to go to Christopher and that Oakville was going to go to Marissa Coulterville. And instead they flopped them. And so Waltonville goes from a 20-minute trip to Christopher, 25 minutes, to twice that amount. And for Oakville, it's even more. They go from 26 to more than an hour, 26 minutes to more than an hour. And again, all that would have taken was take Waltonville and New Athens, the 1 and the 4, and swap them with the 2 and the 3.
Yep.
And it just I don't get it.
It makes no sense.
Get it. But again, at the end of the day, if you're not going to go by the seeds, then you just get rid of them. I mean, because it makes no sense to seed this 1 through 15 and then go, well, we're just going to put people where we want.
Yeah, no, if that's how you're going to do it, then go back to the old regional system, because that's basically how it was going anyways. and you'll get the best out of that regional. And, my football idea of doing divisionals and then into the quarterfinals, I mean, it's the same thing of, you're going to have some areas that are more populated by better teams, and unfortunately they're going to have to knock each other out early. But you know what? That's how playoffs go sometimes, even in the pros, where obviously the seeding's done better, but sometimes still you have people talking about, oh, man, this game that was 2 rounds before the championship ended up being the deciding factor, really. That's just how it goes sometimes. But, yeah, we could definitely see a better seeding system at this point.
Right, and it's like this in all of the 4-class sports, because we see it in basketball, we see it in baseball and softball in the spring, and in this year, I mean the girls basketball, the quarterfinals were on Saturday, but the boys don't start till Monday. Well, those quarterfinals are on campus sites.
Yeah.
So, here's the thing: if you play all those on Saturday, what do they tell us in football? Well, it's a Saturday. You're gonna travel. Or you can travel.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not the same. So again, if you're a lower seed, the likelihood of you making it out is not great or whatever. And look, if you do, you don't care where you're going.
Right.
You go to the other side of the state if it means you're going to play in the semifinals.
Right. Exactly. It's just. Yeah, there's. I'd love to talk to the people that made these seedings and these decisions and get their thought process behind it, but I suspect that we wouldn't be happy with their answers.
Well, and I know that others have been told that, you don't understand the travel, and you're right. I mean, and again, going back to just the most succinct way to describe it, we have subsectionals to allow for travel. So we do not need to further adjust the seedings because this is what it is. And and again, I mean, you've got some teams heading in different places, and some years it doesn't matter. I mean,
right.
And when I say when we were talking about this subsectional of death, and it's like some years if one has to play a 6 instead of the 8, it's a big difference. This year didn't feel like it was as much because everybody was so good.
Right.
But then they go and throw the biggest curveball. And not even close, to put 5 and 8 together in the quarterfinals and 9 and 12 in the quarterfinals is just one of the most egregious errors that I think I remember here in the pairings process.
Well, and the other thing I'll throw in there, and this is something that would have been unavoidable because they're 1 and 4, but Bree Central, Althoff and Pinckneyville likely meeting in their regional finals at Chester, and the 8 people, which again is voted by media. But that they're number 1 and number 2 in the state in 2A. If this is the way we're going to go with all these subsectionals and everything, I'll take back what I said last week, and I say, go ahead and start just seeding the subsectionals 1 through 24, honestly, or 1 through 32, however many it is, 1 to wherever at this point. Because if that's how it's going to be, then absolutely. Especially when you look at the fact that, and I said, once you put it out, take it out of the box, you can't put it back in.
Right.
But again, if this is the results we're going to get, and then you also look at the fact that this year specifically, number 1 and number 2 in the media poll are going to be meeting in a regional final likely.
Right.
Go ahead and just seed it 1 through 24 or whatever.
And that's one of the reasons why they went away from the old regional setup, because you had certain regionals, and one of them was the Nashville, Mater Dei, that whole regional, and so now they've just recreated the same thing. And it's important to note that the IHSA seeding is done based on coaches' vote.
Yeah,
that's right. The polls have nothing to do with it, and in many ways, I think that that's not a bad thing.
No, I agree.
I think that in the coaches' poll or the coaches' seating, there's always some issues there. You have maybe some that don't vote. You have some that maybe sandbag or maybe try to set themselves up for a better matchup. Yeah. And look, I get it. There's no perfect system, and it would take a mathematician to come up with the formula to come up with like a playoff point system like for football that you would wait for class. A team like Meridian that's playing 3A, 4A, you'd have to weight that in some manner to make that try to balance out a little bit. But
it'd be more complicated than net.
It would. And and at the same point though is just this current system is not. This doesn't work, and again, it's funny that this is an organization where schools are complaining and wanting to go 1 through 32 in football, which would mean travel all over the state, regardless of seating. But yet we're not gonna travel in the subsectional.
Yeah.
For basketball, I mean, and that just, and again, there are things that can be done. Play the quarterfinals on Saturday. Hey, look at the 2 matchups if you're going to play the 2 semifinals in the same night, and put the one with the longest travel, make that be the 6 o'clock game.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't rocket science.
No. Yeah, there's always going to be ways that you can make it better, and then always it seems like when they're released, it goes the complete opposite direction. And so I don't know what the answer is at this point. Maybe we need to go into the back and just hunker down for maybe 2 days or something. Maybe we come out with something that's the best system they have.
I had such great hope after the girls' pairings came out, because those were pretty well done. I mean, look, there are going to be some, you had to make some adjustments, because if a 7 seed is hosting and a 7 and an 8 being switched around because of who was hosting the regional, those are, but again, the boys was just, now to get this change, and we've talked a little bit about IHSA process, this is going to have to come out of the basketball advisory committee.
Yes.
That's going to have to come out of the, hey, we need to do something with the seating. So again, this goes back to this isn't the big bad old IHSA just sitting there banging their fist on the table going, well, no, by golly, this is how we're going to do it. These are the rules that are set up, and the rules are set up that only the top 4 seeds are protected, and that anybody else is fair game to move around. That's going to have to change, and for that to do so, it's going to have to come out of the committee.
Well, and it's, again, what I said last week about just, the fact that, taking things out of the box and everything, and the fact that, they aren't going to look at one subsectional and say, oh, we got to change everything for one subsectional. It's an egregious error right now, but they're also going to look at it and say, well, if you're the only ones complaining about it, and we've got all these other classes with all these other subsectionals, it'd be what I think it'd be 32 subsectionals. If they're looking to be like, well, it's just one subsectional that's complaining about it, they're going to say, oh, well, it'll correct itself in time. So it's got to be a lot of them that are going to it. I wouldn't say maybe even half, but at least a quarter of them got to go to it probably and say, this is unacceptable. And I don't know if there's that many that are going to be complaining that much.
Well, and the thing is that even just something as simple as keeping the top 8. I mean, when you've got an area as wide geographically as we have, maybe West Central Illinois would be similar, in the schools being all spread out, that type of thing. You're going to have this where when all the schools are concentrated, you don't have this. They can just go the seat, and so you probably, and I haven't looked at the all 4 classes and all that, to see who's going where, but by and large, this could just be a problem in this region and maybe one or 2 others.
And if that's the case, then I think that they need to, on that advisory committee, have people that are dedicated to those specific pockets of the state, because it's a huge state. Illinois, people forget how big of a state Illinois is. And that, yes, there are pockets that have situation like we do. If that's going to be the case, and you have complaints coming out of those specific areas constantly about this, then maybe they need to look at having 1 or 2 people that specifically dedicate themselves to those pockets and saying, okay, we got to make sure that this is fair for them just as much as it is for the Chicago area or for Central Illinois, where there's about 5 teams in every city.
Well, and the thing is that if you make the adjustments, it's likely not going to affect the other.
Exactly.
The tweaks that need to be done to kind of fix some things in these areas where the seating's wonky or the pairings are wonky based on the seating, by and large, they may not be a factor in these other areas. So, here's the thing. Fix it, and it's not going to affect the other half, or however many. And
it could be specifically for, okay, in this area or this subsectional, this is what we look at for this one, for that. Obviously, you don't want to create big changes for each one, but if you look at it and say, well, this one's got more distance between each town or whatever, so this is why we do it this way, one way or another. Or you could look at it and say, okay, this rule applies to this, but it actually still works for all the other ones, and it won't affect them at all. It's going to take a little bit of effort, I think, and I don't know if someone's going to be willing to put in that effort, unfortunately.
Yeah, and again, look, I understand if you're the best team, you should be, you should beat whoever's in front of you, and I get that, but at the end of the day, if you're going to take the time and you're going to seed it and you're going to post all the numbers, then run it the way it's supposed to be. And I probably better stop there. The good thing is that the games start Monday.
Yeah.
And we can grouse about the pairings or whatever, but now it just gets to be about games, and all the rest of this stuff is irrelevant. You just got to go out and you got to survive in advance.
Yeah, without a doubt. And right now, the thing is, a lot of people are taking their eyes and putting it on who's going to win the conference championship in this. Yeah, I mean, you have Mount Vernon, Marion tonight. That's a huge one. Mount Vernon can win it outright. Heron and Murfreesboro aren't playing, but they both are playing for a conference championship. They both win. They're going to win it together. If one wins, the other loses. It's outright. They both lose. It's going to be a share. It's a fun situation right now, and those are just two. I think there's a couple more around the area, too, it's that close that it's come down to the final night of the regular season.
Well, and if Marion were to beat Mount Vernon and Centralia wins tonight as well, that would be a three-way sharing of the South 7. And then where you've got the Black Diamond East, last Friday I went to Carmi, and the Bulldogs beat Hamilton County, who had a chance to clinch a share. And so now Hamilton County becomes the biggest Carmi-White County fans tonight because they're playing Fairfield. Fairfield's clinched a share. They can win it outright, but they're going to have to win at Carmi to do it. And if Carmi wins, Hamilton County gets a share after all.
That's right. So they, not just Carmi White fans, but also Mitchell Edwards fans saying, hey, break the record again.
Yeah, and that's, if you go to our website and look at our Primetime Performer nominees, our Orthopedic Center of Southern Illinois, we had some incredible individual performances last week, including Mitchell Edwards, who set a school record with 55. That was that's a career for some guys.
Yeah.
And he got 55 in the win over Wayne City. Eli Presser had 48 for Pope County, both of them school records. So anyway, go and read about it, vote in the poll, and enjoy some games. We got great games tonight. We've got postseason action on tap tonight and tomorrow. We've got state wrestling, girls state bowling. And then we get into the boys regionals next week and the girls sectional. So what a time. What a time to be a sports fan.
One of the best times in terms of preps games, prep sports. One of the best times of the year, without a doubt.
Definitely. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the River Radio Sports Central podcast, powered by our friends at NovaCare Rehabilitation. For Matty V, I'm Darren Kinnard. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. Of course, that's wherever you tune in. It doesn't matter. It's your time. Have a great weekend, everyone.